Good morning and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. For those of us who live in and around Columbia, most of us probably aren't aware that there is a Friends Meeting House in our area. Friends Meeting House is what the Quakers call their church building, and I happened to buy it about 35 years ago, and it's still there. Probably most of us, at least in this area, thought that Quakers were mostly people from the early days of our country and didn't really exist today. So it may be surprising that we have a place they worship right among us. Quaker worship is described as unplanned. That means when they gather, they sit in silence until someone feels that they have been given a message from God to share with the others. That makes sense when you consider the founder of the Quaker movement, a man named George Fox. This week we are exploring some of the people who are commemorated in the Lutheran Church calendar as people of great faith who can inspire our own faith. George Fox is one of those, and he is remembered on January 13th. Fox was born in England in 1624 as the son of a weaver, but he was apprenticed to a shoemaker and may have spent time working as a shepherd as well. There is little evidence that he had any formal education, yet he read extensively. As best as anyone can tell, he was raised as a Puritan, but he eventually found that unsatisfying, and at the age of 18 he left home on a religious quest. During his quest he experienced several of what he called openings, insights which he thought corrected traditional concepts of faith. After a long struggle, Fox came to the conclusion that the ways of the church in his day were inadequate, and a truer expression of faith was that God speaks inwardly and directly to a person's heart. Finding no comfort in the church and receiving no help from its ministers, Fox became a wandering preacher, claiming that this inward revelation was the real source of authority, above creeds and even above Scripture itself. He traveled throughout England and established local congregations along with some other men and women preachers who called themselves publishers of the truth. Other people treated Fox with ridicule and derision because of several of his peculiar habits. He wore a leather suit, sat in hollow trees, and refused to take off his hat to anyone, all of them odd behaviors in that day. He was beaten, stoned, put in the stocks, and put in prison 8 distinct times. Nevertheless, he gained a large following from both the poor and uncultured, and some who were wealthy, like William Penn. One result of Fox's ministry was a new sense of morality. Tradesmen who were Quaker were universally respected for their integrity. In 1660, England passed special legislation and action against the Quakers. Fox suggested that his followers organize into regular monthly and quarterly business meetings, and this became the permanent pattern for what became known as the Society of Friends. After 20 more years, it finally became legal to be a Quaker. Later in life, he visited the British colonies in the Caribbean and North America, especially in Maryland and Rhode Island, strengthening the communities of Friends there. He noted the horrors of the slave trade, and when he returned to England, he founded the abolitionist movement. He also traveled to Holland and Northern Europe. George Fox contributed to the renewal of the church by calling into question its pride and self-satisfaction. Perhaps his greatest contribution is to the advancement of religious toleration and the equality of everyone before the law. George Fox is commemorated on January 13th. May God's Spirit work in us that we may renew our society today. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.